Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Babbling Irons match preview with myself and Mike. And today we are going to be going through the upcoming clash against Southampton, absolute must-win game, analysing where we can get at them, also their strengths that they're going to possess when it comes to Sunday, and yeah, just give our overall thoughts on the preview and hopefully predict a win. So, Mike, this is it. This is crunch time for West Ham now. International break is over. We're back into the thick of it with 3 games in 6 days coming up.
Yep.
The first one being Southampton at home. How are you feeling going into it? How's the nerves?
I can't say I'm feeling confident, but I don't think I've felt confident about any game recently when we've played. It's not because we're playing particularly badly. I just look at Southampton and I don't see it as an easy game. They have a lot of pace, which we'll go into. There's a lot of good things about Southampton since they have moved to a new manager. That was probably some of the things that I'd like to see at West Ham. So, yeah, I think it's difficult at the moment because I see a team that's playing with some level of confidence, playing with some level of intensity. And then I look at us who don't seem to have that level of self-belief at the moment. And intensity is something that I think we can all agree has been distinctly lacking of late.
Absolutely. And I think if we look at kind of our past fixtures against Southampton at home, especially, we've actually done pretty well. I know last season we lost 3-2. I think it was around Christmas time. I think it was Boxing Day, actually.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Crozier as well, wasn't it?
Yeah. Before that, we'd kind of done pretty well, like 3-0, 3-0, 3-1, 3-0. So like we had a pretty good record against them. And then now it seems to have been a bit wobbly the past couple of games. But let's look at it head-to-head this season for both teams. So obviously we've played 2 less games than them. They're actually rock bottom at the moment, and we're just above them in 18th. 1 point ahead of them on 24, and they've got 23, and the same amount of wins with 6. So a pretty similar season to us in terms of performance-wise, and I think that kind of says how poor we've been, because throughout this season, I've kind of looked at Southampton as a very poor team so far in the league, and you know the appointments they made midway through didn't work out, and now they're starting to pick up a couple of results, but that alone kind of tells you how we've underperformed this season and how really we are in the thick of it now, because we got a team like Southampton, you know, no disrespect, but we are in the relegation battle with them now. Like there's no getting away from that. And this match on Sunday is absolutely massive. So wanted to start, Mike, just by kind of going through, obviously their key player being James Ward-Prowse, someone Moyes absolutely loves. He was even speaking about him in his press conference again today, how much of a good lad he is. So even off the pitch, he's probably been talking to him. But yeah, what about on the pitch? Talk to me about Ward-Prowse and the threat he's going to possess on Sunday.
Yeah, so he's one of those players you just don't really give time to because he has such an expansive range of passing. He doesn't have the pace. You know, in the past when we played against Southampton, a couple of times he played right back and he's been absolutely torn one because he doesn't have great pace, but he's often played there because he's good crossing ability, and because he wants to do a job for his home team. So that's what he's done. But playing in the role that he plays, he often is allowed to get free because he has Lieva playing next to him. And he's not the kind of player that you can give that freedom. Obviously, we understand and know his threat from set pieces. I think that's without saying. We can't afford to give away anything silly within 30 yards of our goal, especially centrally, because he is going to have a shot at goal and he doesn't tend to miss by very much. So we have to be aware. And I know some people might go, well, you know, it's a free kick, but it's Southampton fans get the same buzz of a free kick that we did when Payet took a free kick. It's exactly the same kind of feeling and buzz. And people must think that's ridiculous, but James Ward-Prowse has scored a hell of a lot of free kicks. And I think he's within the top 2-3 now, I think, for goals from free kicks in the Premier League history. So it's not someone we should take lightly in that situation. So giving away anything in and around the area, especially within 30 yards, is almost inviting a free shot at goal from Ward-Prowse, which is something we need to be very, very aware of. And I think Declan Rice is going to have a very busy evening. I think Paqueta is also going to need to have eyes in the back of his head as well.
Yeah.
Because his passing is so good. If he gets a bit of space, he can create. And And I just picked out one example in the game against Leicester, which they won 1-0. But this was essentially from a throw-in, and the kind of blocks, as I'm saying here, you've obviously got Tete's number 37. He should be a bit more inside in which to kind of cover, I believe it's Alcaraz. Their number 22 should be pushed up higher and higher on Ward-Prowse, or even Maddison should be dropping in. Now, obviously, Maddison's in a position because if they win the ball, he wants to be in a place where he's behind their defensive line and he can run straight at their back four. But obviously, it's not in an ideal position as to if the ball goes back to Southampton or Southampton retain possession, he's not in a great place in which to press Ward-Prowse. And obviously, the number 22, again, is in a position where he's trying to cover Alcaraz. But the problem is, Alcaraz hasn't got no intention of receiving the ball. But he's in a position which maybe as a second or a third pass in that play, he could be in a position to receive it in a good place. And by that, it kind of attracts Leicester's number 22 to sit a bit deeper rather than being pushed up a bit higher on Ward-Prowse to kind of prevent him from getting space. And you see he's got so much time, so much space, and when the ball's played into him, then there has to be that push out. So the left centre midfielder, Maddison as the attacking midfielder, both in poor positions really to impact or press against Ward-Prowse. They've also got a player on the right wing who's already willing and knowing that a pass is coming and he's ready to go in behind. So again, if we play a line as Leicester have here, or if our defenders get pulled out of position, he does have the ability in which to pick those passes between lines to play players in. And Southampton have a lot of pace. Now, their overall position in the league is fair based on their performance over the season, but that was also based on the fact that Nathan Jones was out of his depth as well and was very tactically naive with them. And also they are quite a young team. I think the Southampton we're seeing at the moment is probably more a true reflection of Southampton and the fact and the pace, enthusiasm, and genuine quality they have in their squad with their young squad, because it is a squad full of quality. We can't just look at the position and go, they're the worst team in the Premier League, because I know the position says that, but based on the team players that they have and based on the actual quality they've played since the change, it's not really the case.
Just a quick message to say, if you are enjoying this video, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel as we are posting regularly and it would really help us out. And yeah, leave a like on the video too. Let's get back into it. Before we kind of touch on the threat that they have with their pace, especially considering they're playing West Ham, who notoriously don't have a lot of pace. Yeah. We're going to, especially playing at home in this match, the emphasis is on us to take the game to Southampton. And I think Moyes has been getting a lot of stick for that, especially in home matches where we just haven't been taking control and dominating possession of the ball when we should be. So in a game like this against Southampton, who are likely to play a 4-4-2, are likely to, have a lot of pace around their wingers and even up front, is that a risk now? Is that going to kind of play into Southampton's hands almost? The fact that we have to try and take the game to them and our fans are going to kind of demand us to push a little bit higher up the pitch, and actually it could maybe turn out to be a better thing for Southampton than us.
To be honest, the problem is as well, even if we go to traditional Moyes way of playing and being defensive and being very structured and being compact, Southampton play with a lot of pace and intensity. Their passing has good pace in it. They have lots of runners. Their fullbacks push very high. They create overloads, and they have players that are comfortable in possession. So even if we sit deep, as to Moyes and he wants to counter them, the problem is we don't necessarily have the pace to break away, because they do have pace again in getting back. There's intensity in pretty much everything they do as of late. Yeah. So if we go too tight, we are making a very difficult game for ourselves. Yeah. Now, we can't be gung-ho, but we have to, in a way, be aggressive when we do have the ball. But we have to also, to do that in times, when I say be aggressive, we have to be aggressive in terms of how we position players when we're in possession. Because Southampton are going to press, and they're going to press with intensity, they're going to press high, they're going to look to hit us hard. That we need to accept and essentially be at one with the fact that we're going to be under pressure
Well,
consistently.
let's take a look at a couple of those examples, Mike. I know you've got a couple already, saved on here. So just to show people, kind of how they play in terms of that high press. So just talk us through what's going on here and how Southampton are going to play also out of possession as well.
Yeah, so a common thing they do is they push up in numbers. So they push high. They've got a high defensive line. Their midfield pushes up high, as well as obviously in their attack. They generally defend in a 4-4-2. So this is against Leicester. And again, basically this is the kind of thing that will happen. If we try and play out from the back, they'll look to try and pin us in the corner. Now, Leicester are comfortable in possession. They have comfortable fullbacks who can accept players and accept that. And as you can see, they have players in positions that can go to players to press and to obviously essentially make it a very difficult situation for Leicester. Now, what Leicester do and what helps them is the position of Maddison. Now, obviously, Castagna can pass infield. I believe it's to Mendy who's playing because it's a simple pass, right? It takes responsibility off of him. That means Mendy really only has one other option. Two options. One is a difficult pass trying to play it into the left wing when Maitland-Niles is coming in. That's on the very far left of the screen, coming into their mark player. So again, that's not really a great idea because most likely it's going to be overhit into the wing. Or he has to turn back basically the goalkeeper. And then you've got Adams, who's in a position where, again, he can chase down the goalkeeper. So that's kind of how they're going. It can be really aggressive and push high. They're going to basically force you in which to try and force you to make a mistake or to hit it long. Now, what Leicester do is they're really smart with it, and it's mainly because of Maddison's position. And this is where we need Paqueta really to be.
Yeah.
Where Mendy is, Declan Rice in that kind of position. Obviously, on the right-hand side, but one of Adams are saying we got him pointing upfield. Again, that's the kind of where Souček, again, should be sitting, really. But if we can get Paqueta in these positions where he's behind Ward-Prowse, when he gets the ball, he then has the ability to turn and go into space. Now, in this situation, Maddison kind of, in the end, he hesitates, doesn't try and pass with his left foot, cuts back inside. The move still develops, which will kind of show it at kind of the end of that move at the end. But what we need to be aware of and what we need to do is that if we get in those kind of situations where they're trying to pen us in and we are able to play through to Paqueta, is that we need to then have runners. They will play quite narrow, and because they push high, if you get in this type of position, especially the fact that we're going to have a natural left footer, Bowen likes to come inside. Now, Bowen could be really important in this game because, and we'll show an example with Tottenham as to how an inverted wingers really actually disrupt their defensive back four and their shape because they like to be quite compact. Now, if Bowen comes inside in that block position, that means all of a sudden we have a centre forward who can potentially do a diagonal run towards the kind of channel, but also means you've got a pass in between the two centre backs potentially that can be fed in. Or again, you create a pass where you can maybe chip it over the back line into the gap between the fullback and the centre back. Yeah. And again, you put them directly through and you're utilising the centre forward's movement in which to essentially disrupt their back line and to create spaces.
Do you think Moyes will be, sorry, Mike, do you think Moyes could then, based on that point, be tempted to play someone like Antonio up front in this match? Because it's exactly what he used to, well, he doesn't do it as much so often anymore, but that was what he was really good at. He was stretching the defenses and making those runs between fullback and centre-back. And like you've just mentioned there, they're going to play a high line. And if we can get Paqueta in that space to get the ball when they do press up, or there might be even an argument for someone like Lanzini to come in instead of Souček. So we have that extra option in midfield to play through Southampton because that's what we're going to need to do. And someone like Antonio up front, do you think Moyes might be tempted to go with that instead of, say, an Ings or Scamacca?
Yeah, I think Ings will make those movements that Iheanacho does, for instance, but I don't think he has the pace of Iheanacho. Antonio ideally would be probably a better one because, again, he could be a player that could potentially not necessarily out muscle, but someone who's going to be have the pace and also have the strength to hold them off. I think what's more important, as you said, I think, again, Lanzini is a very good shout as to playing in the Souček role because it is going to be a 3v2 for us centrally. And having another player who is comfortable under pressure is going to be better than having Souček, who can sometimes, as we've seen, he can not panic, but he can be insecure in possession when he's under.
I think for me as well, Mike, Souček won't get in those positions as much to receive the ball. He'll often kind of push up or shy away from coming to collect the ball. So then we don't have that option in the first place as well.
No, exactly. It puts a heavy burden on Rice and Paqueta to be those outlets and to get in those positions to receive that. So it does put a burden on them. And whereas if we can spread that load and increase our ability to play under pressure and to play with the ball, it's going to actually help us be able to play through Southampton and play through their press, because they are going to push incredibly high. And if we have players that are able to not only accept pressure, but also then pass through, then we have a chance and really to get at them. And that's when they can start to become vulnerable. And, as we said in that situation, is that you have the ability then of Bowen's inside, you have two, essentially then you end almost two centre forwards. If Souček, the way he is, if he's pushing high as well, that also means you make that centre back, the right back, that would be left back even, their left back.
Yeah.
You would keep him honest, because then he's got a choice. Either he sticks kind of to his position and try to cover both players, say Bowen and Soufal, and essentially just kind of goes, I'm going to have to trust that if this ball goes over, that the ball's either going to be hit too heavy or my goalkeeper is going to come out and save it.
Yeah.
So if we can get in those types of situations and we can get our players pushed high, in particular, Bowen coming in and inverting quite a bit, getting the centre forward to consistently run behind that back line because they're going to play high.
Yeah.
And again, having a fullback, or at least even say Souček coming out wide on that side. As long as when we compact that defence, because they will follow the team, you have players ready to get on the outside, it can have huge benefits for us in the game. And that's how we need to utilise essentially their good structure and their compactness against them, because it can be a weakness.
Absolutely. Let's kind of get into that and break it down a bit more visually for people with a couple of examples about how Southampton are compact when they don't have the ball. And I think someone like Declan Rice, you'll see him do it a lot throughout many matches, is he will look for that switch of play over whether it be the right back or left back or either winger. He will look to do that. Something that I'm being hypercritical, but something I'm hypercritical of Declan Rice with is when he does play those passes, often takes a long time to kind of coast through the air. Sometimes he needs to play it with a bit more intensity and a bit more zip to just progress the play a little bit, because sometimes it can be easy for a team like Southampton, who are compact, to just shift across, and then it's hard to then double up on that side. So let's go through the example of the goal Spurs scored against Southampton a couple of weeks ago, and then we'll follow it up with the Man United game as well. So yeah, just take us through how Southampton play in terms of the compactness and how we can also look to exploit that on Sunday as well. Yeah,
so as we mentioned, obviously they like to be quite compact. That's both from a midfield perspective and from a defensive perspective, and from a back four. So you can see in here, you got your two centre forwards, 4 midfield, 4 defence. Again, they all go with the ball. So they've all shifted over to the right-hand side. And obviously a big reason to that as well is because when you look at how Spurs have set up, obviously Spurs play a back 3, but the way that they have Kulusevski and Son both inverting draws in both fullbacks. Kane is obviously going to occupy at least one of the centre-backs. So you have one of them ready to maybe come out to press Son if needs be, if he's going to develop. Obviously, then you have the fullback coming over to cover Kulusevski, as well as I think it's Salisu is in a position where he's looking to mark Kane as the left-sided centre-back. Obviously, what Tottenham do well, they kind of made a box midfield in this situation. So it means they have 2 players directly behind the defensive line, and then they have the striker then looking to run in behind. So they've given themselves options, really, and obviously they've got a player out wide. So again, they're compacting the defence of Southampton, whilst keeping the width with their fullback. So this is something we maybe need to actually look to do. We need to actually be far more narrower with Benrahma and Bowen. They need to be much closer. And in fact, I would play them within the bounds of the 18-yard area, and then look to utilise the fullbacks in which to generate that actual width. And then it's incumbent on the likes of Paqueta and Souček to come out and spread that midfield free, which to provide a bit more kind of solidity, maybe in transition. Now, when the ball is passed to Son, he's able to turn. And again, look how compact that team is. They're all in pretty much over on the right-hand side in that complete middle kind of space. So they're in the inside right and middle third. And it's just a simple pass. It's an incredibly simple pass just into an abundance of place for Porro, who is absolutely steamrolling forward. Now, obviously, it's going to be Soufal for us, and we know Soufal doesn't score. But again, it's the fact that we have that ability in which to, if we're looking to utilize our wingers in the way that we've, the likes of Spurs have done, for instance, in this one, it really can actually mean that you create abundance of space in those wide areas to then exploit. And obviously, as it transpires, the ball's played into Porro and he absolutely smashes it into the top corner, I think off the underside of the crossbar and in. But again, it's just an example of taking their structure, which is good, and using it against them, because the 4-4-2 is a good formation. It gives you good spread across the pitch. But if you can compact it and then start to utilize players on the overlap, then it certainly can make a difference. And they don't necessarily have in their wingers the most defensively astute. They're hardworking, but they're not necessarily defensively astute.
Yeah.
And the other example we have is against United, where United, again, they switch the ball quickly. And this is one of the things we need to do a lot against Southampton. We need to look to switch the ball quickly and with pace. To your point, Frankie, not kind of hang it up in the air.
Yeah.
A player who actually used to do that quite well, not a player that I've always been a fan of, but Dawson, he used to actually hit those diagonals with a bit of pace. That's what we need to be doing, because they are going to move as one as a team. That they're very regimental in that movement across from side to side, and they stay very close together, which is obviously by design to ensure they don't leave many spaces. Now, as we've seen with that transition from Leicester, it creates spaces against them, but you have to be willing to accept the high press and to accept them coming onto you. In open play, you need to then, like Man City have done for years, play on one side and then quickly get the ball out into the other direction, because that way you then disrupt the defense. They have to move. They generally tend to create spaces. Now, obviously, Fernandez, some great pass out into Shaw, but what it also then does is creates a 2v1 in that left-hand side. So all of a sudden, they've got an inside pass. Shaw can go to the outside, or he has the option to cross the ball if the right back for Southampton is then attracted, sorry to be the right winger, is attracted to the movement of the Man United player not in possession. You also see defensively, they're not necessarily that great for scanning. Their centre-back, I think, is Salisu in this game. So actually is more concentrated on Anthony on the edge of the area than he is with Weghorst. And in fact, he is oblivious to Weghorst being directly behind him. As a result, when the cross comes in, he completely misjudged the flight. Obviously, Southampton, and this is a regular occurrence and something consistently that happens, they're not great at preventing crosses. And they do have quite a high frequency of crosses coming in to their area, and their marking isn't the strongest. Yeah. So this is something we know Moyes likes to get the ball wide, but we need to do it at pace. We need to ensure that we're pulling them around to do this. Weghorst obviously gets on the back of the defender, can see the defender's number, which we always say, and it's always said in football, if you can see the defender's number as a striker, you've got them. Essentially, you are in the best possible position. Now, unfortunately, his header lacks power, lacks any real direction, and it goes harmlessly into the goalkeeper. But it is a common theme and a common piece. And another example was against Leicester again, where essentially they compacted their midfield and Tete comes inside and then he just hits it diagonally into acres of space. And once again, this time the fullback, the left back, so much space around him. As you can see, the players coming out to meet him, they've got no chance. They've got obviously Barnes has come inside. Again, the importance of those inverted wingers to come inside to condense that midfield, that defense, is important, because that midfield essentially goes to the same width as their defense. So we do that, we have opportunities to get down those in those kind of flank areas. Brilliant cross in. Iheanacho, he missed a couple of glaring opportunities in this game, and this would be in one of them. He got a free header because, again, marking's not great, misjudged the flight, and he headers it wide. Those are the types of things we've got to do. We've got to be quick in getting the ball out into the flank. when we do get there, we have to deliver with quality. It can't just be a rush, which we've seen consistently. We get quality into the area and we get players in there, potentially for the likes of Antonio, for Skamaka, for Souček, even Danny Ings as well. They will give you an opportunity, because defending at set pieces, defending at crosses isn't something they do particularly well consistently.
Yeah.
And they've been fortunate in those games I've actually watched, in that they haven't conceded from a cross, because great opportunities have been kind of created from those.
Yeah, I mean, looking at kind of Southampton's weaknesses there, it's really important that we do exactly what you say in terms of bringing in Benrahma and Bowen more narrow and getting width from our fullbacks. And that's what kind of concerns, because there has been a bit of team news come out as well in Moyes' press conference. He said that Aged maybe has a little bit of a niggle from the international break. Skamaka, another one who has a bit of a knee problem, and Emerson could be off with a sickness. So if we don't have that left back option of Emerson, it's going to be either Cresswell or Johnson in that position, because it's likely to be Kufal right back. And that then kind of limits us just to that right hand side. I know a lot of the time we do kind of look to overlap Bowen as our kind of primary sources of attack. And a lot of the time the left hand side is kind of Benrahma, do your thing, which is, it kind of tries to provide balance. You don't want to overcommit. So let's look at the predicted lineups of both teams. It's kind of hard to predict, but we've done it considering Moyes being kind of careful with his wording and potentially trying to get a little bit of an edge going into Sunday. But we'd expect us to play a 4-3-3. Fabianski likely to come back in Fariola if he's fit. Kufal, another one, is going to be an important player, and he played a couple games over international break, so he should be ready. Aged and Zuma, again, maybe Aged may go out for someone like Ogbonna, but we need to see how fit he is. And Emerson, another one. The midfield three, again, I'd like to see someone like Lanzini or Fornals in the middle instead of Souček, or even someone like Flynn Downs. But I think it'll be this midfield three. I don't think Moyes will change it. And then the front three of Benrahma, Bowen, and then again, Skamaka may have an injury, so it may be that Antonio Ings comes in for him. But I think if Skamaka is fit, I think Moyes will probably go with him in this kind of match. So looking at Southampton, as we kind of mentioned, they do play a 4-4-2. They've got a few injuries themselves, especially at centre-back. You kind of noticed that Maitland-Niles is one that maybe have to come in at centre-back with Salisu out injured and Bella Kotchap. But yeah, they do play that 4-4-2. Che Adams, another one up top that's kind of picked up a little niggle over international break. So maybe someone like Mara that comes in. But that midfield two of Lavia and Ward-Prowse kind of provides them that balance to be able to play that expansive football that they play. So one thing I want to kind of touch on before we end this, Mike, is the Southampton dangers. And, what we mentioned at the very start of this video, the threat of their wide players and the pace that they have. So can you just explain to us and break down exactly what that means and why we have to be, especially West Ham as of all teams, so careful of their pace and what they're going to bring from wide areas?
Yeah, so playing a high line against Southampton could almost be a bit of a suicide, especially if they're playing Mara. Mara is electrically quick. They have Suleiman on the left side. Alcaraz tends to also play on the right hand side. He's played there in the last couple of games more over Elianusi. Again, good, lots of pace, but it's the rotation off that front. What you tend to see is Che Adams is really kind of the focal point. Walcott is used and tends to kind of drift wide. If he does that, then Alcaraz comes inside, for instance. Obviously Suleiman tends to drift inside as well, so they kind of in many ways end up playing a 4-2-2-2 as a formation in possession. Again, helps them create a box in midfield, and the reason why teams are playing this box midfield is because it also means that you compact a team. It also means you can have two players behind the defensive line, and also you have whatever you have in attack if you play one man and so on. Now, what they'll also look to do is to exploit any team that creates gaps. They have an abundance of pace. Their fullbacks push up incredibly high as well, and that's obviously why they bring their wingers in, because their fullbacks will push forward. So it's tended to be Maitland-Niles and Walter Peters even play on either side. When they push forward extensively, they've got good delivery, and they are a consistent and constant threat because, again, their wingers will come inside. And an example against Leicester that we just picked out, we only picked out the one example, but the one example where they done this was at a restart. So there was a free kick on the edge of Leicester's area. The ball was played forward, a tiny bit of play, but Lievo just essentially wins the ball, and it's played then into the right-hand side. So you can obviously Walcott comes over, which attracts the left back. You've got the two centre-backs then obviously moving across, and then obviously you've got Pereira essentially right by the kind of the centre circle spot. But what's important is obviously because where Walcott is, Alcaraz can come inside. Adams obviously becomes the focal point up top. And obviously you've got Sulemana, who again is moved so far inside that you have in effect a 3-on-3 situation, or you end up with essentially a 3v2 on that left-hand side, because obviously you have Adams, Alcaraz, and Sulemana. So as they transition, they were really aggressive because, yes, it was a free kick. But again, their players are pushed up high. They're pushed really central. So again, you can create that central overload. You're putting them in a position where they are going to be more impactful in terms of having a chance to goal because they are central. And what the big mistake Leicester make is they don't go with Che Adams. They allow Che Adams to drop. They allow him to turn before they really pressure him. And as we said, they've got great pace. Alcaraz against Suter is an absolute mismatch. And the ball is then played in behind. It's a really simple pass. There's nothing really complicated about this as a goal. It's just played into Adams, who hits the ball, is able to turn and then pass. And it's because they're playing such a high line, they lack pace. And again, if we do this, we could get caught out. Fortunately, Zuma does have a bit of pace about him. So does Aged, but we can't rely on those guys potentially being able to get back and get into position. And as a result, as the ball is played through, Alcaraz as well, really smartly, takes a shot early. You may argue the goalkeeper could have done better. Maybe his feet weren't quite set, but he kind of throws his foot out. It goes past his foot and lands in the bottom corner, and it's obviously 1-0 to Southampton. They obviously go on to win that game. But those are the type of things we're going to be aware of, that as much as we're saying we need to bring our wingers inside, they're going to do that. They're also going to rotate essentially that front four, bar the centre forward, if it was Che Adams, will be consistently rotating, which makes it very difficult to mark. And it leaves you that point of either you follow the player or you allow them to go. Now, if you do that, then it's very important on your midfield, and in particular, maybe your defensive midfielder, to then drop in a bit more. So it's something we've got to be aware of, that they are going to essentially be allowed to roam off their wings. If Walcott's up top, he's going to be the same. And essentially, Mara will then probably be utilised as that kind of more focal point. But again, he's going to be looking to get in behind rather than playing hold-up play. And he has blistering pace. And the thing we need to be extra cautious of is that if we do go a goal down, their shape, whilst they do give up chances, like we've said, they are pretty resolute. They are pretty good at holding together, and they will consistently go throughout a whole 90 minutes. And with the pace that they have, they are a huge threat on the counter-attack.
Yeah.
So we have to then potentially even ask the goalkeeper, and this is the problem potentially with Fabianski, is ask the goalkeeper to sit slightly higher as well, because essentially you're going to need the goalkeeper to come out and sweeper.
Yeah, I think if we go 1-0 down, it's just going to play straight into their hands of exactly how they'd want to play, especially being away from home in such a big game for them. So it's going to be really important that we do start well. You know, we've said it and how many previews that we need to start well and you know, get that first goal, because it's just so rare that we've seen us go ahead in a match. Like, it really is. We're often the ones chasing the match after going a goal down. I mean, even against Aston Villa in our last home Premier League game, started the game pretty well. You know, we were playing some decent football. Then just one sucker punch from Ollie Watkins, and we found ourselves chasing the game. And luckily, we got the penalty to get back into it. But it needs that first goal. And you know, we've been in this situation before against Southampton, where it's kind of a must-win game towards the end of the season. And we came out absolutely firing. You know, we were 3-0 up at half-time. Arnautovic got a couple goals, and that is exactly the type of intensity and performance we need to put out. Because yeah, we've sat here and analysed how Southampton will play with their intensity and their high press, and you know they'll work really hard. We need to do that. We need to show our side of that, because we haven't done that enough this season. We've been too easy to pass through. We've been too easy to approach, and I think for once we need to actually put the actual gas on and go at a team, because it's all well and good being, like we've said, kind of pragmatic about it and kind of sitting in a shape and being wary of Southampton, but we need to start focusing on our own strengths. And I think one thing that Moyes did say in the press conference today, which for okay, maybe he's had a little turn, was kind of more shifting towards a focus on us rather than Southampton, when he was talking about, how the game could go and what he wants to focus on. So we might see a little bit of a difference in mentality this weekend. I'm hoping we do. And yeah, I think having Agard and Emerson especially fit for this match is going to be huge for us, because if we lose both of those players, it's two key components of not just our defensive play, but also what we can do from an offensive point of view, whether it be Agard playing those long passes that we mentioned that someone like Dawson used to do, or those overlapping runs that Emerson's going to produce on the wing when we need to kind of create 2v1 overloads when they're playing compact. So I think it all ties in really nicely there. I hope you guys have kind of enjoyed the breakdown of Southampton, and you guys will have a little bit more of an insight into what they're going to bring Sunday and how we need to play in terms of getting that victory. So Mike, I want to end with this because I know this is your favorite part of the show,
Yep.
but score predictions. What are you thinking?
I think, in all honesty, it'll be a draw. The important thing
is that enough for Moyes to keep his job? I know it's come out that if Moyes does lose on Sunday, that it could kind of potentially be the end for him. Do you think a draw's enough to keep him in the job?
I don't think. No, I don't think it should. I mean, if I say yes, I'm not being consistent with what I've said since since Christmas, basically.
Yeah.
I don't think it is enough, or shouldn't be enough to keep in his job. You would argue, or the board would argue, well, we got 3 games. Sacking him after Southampton with 2 more to come isn't necessarily sensible.
Yeah.
If we get a draw, then he gets a stay of execution over the next 2 games to pick up a win. But I don't like this going through games, 3 game sequences. We saw it under Bilic, and it just doesn't do what you think it does. You may get a couple of points here and there, but it's not necessarily because of the manager. It's more that those players are, look, I don't want to get embarrassed and get relegated. I don't want to be that. Don't want that on my CV. And players play up in certain games because they understand, the importance.
What are you thinking? High scoring draw, low scoring draw?
In honesty, I think 1-1. If it's going to be that, I think 1-1. I think one of the most important players for in this game could be Cornet if he plays.
Yeah.
Because of his pace and the space that they can leave in those wing positions. And again, his propensity and wanting to come inside could really help us. But I think maybe we're going to have to be aggressive with substitutes. We're going to have to be aggressive when we're in possession. And as I said, with that's accepting pressure from Southampton and playing through, actually essentially going toe for toe with them in many ways around that and saying, we're going to accept it. We have the players. It's the truth. Paqueta is incredibly comfortable playing under pressure. So is Declan Rice. Again, exactly the same. Zuma has played under pressure with Chelsea. He knows how to do it. Bowen can. Benrahma, we know, can play in those tight spaces. Again, we've got Cornet. Skamaka certainly can play in tight spaces. So we have the players. They just need to have the impetus and self-belief in which to play in that kind of environment and in that type of game.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
I'm going to be a little bit more positive. I think we're going to win. I think our record against Southampton at home, generally has been really good. And they've actually got a few injuries themselves as well that could potentially hinder them as well. So, yeah, I think we'll probably edge it by 1 goal. So I'll go with 2-1. I don't think we'll keep a clean sheet. I don't think most West Ham fans would predict a clean sheet at the moment. But, yeah, hopefully we can get the win. It's a massive game, man. And, 2 days away now, Sunday, 2 p.m. If you guys are going to the game, enjoy. Hopefully it'll be one that is a bit more of a good atmosphere and we can get behind the team, because that's all that matters at this stage of the season. It is the points on the board. So, yeah, hope you've enjoyed this preview. Leave a like on the video if you did. Subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. And Mike, one thing left to say.
Come on, you
Come on, you
Irons.
Irons.